Then it fell silent, leaving Isabel standing stunned in the dirt road, with a mystery even greater than what she had just endured. Isabel didn't tell Juan about the whisper. She didn't know how to explain it, and deep down, she felt the thank you was something private, a secret meant only for her. She carefully wrapped the dagger in a clean cloth and tucked it deep into her backpack, but she could still feel its gentle, warm pulse, like a second heart beating beside her ribs. The journey back to the harbor passed in silence. The sky was fully bright, and Lake Titicaca had returned to its serene, majestic beauty. Other fishing boats began to appear in the distance, and the laughter of villagers echoed from the shore. The normal world was returning, but for Isabel, it had become frighteningly alien. Everything looked the same as before, but she knew that beneath that calm surface lay an abyss of spirits, and in this world, there were ghost islands on no map. When the boat docked, Juan helped her tie it up. They avoided each other's eyes much. A strange awkwardness had formed between them, the awkwardness of two people who had stepped through a door to another world and returned. "Thank you, Juan," Isabel said sincerely. "For everything," Juan just nodded. "Be careful with that thing, miss," he said, his eyes flicking toward Isabel's backpack. "Listen to it, but never let it control you." With that, he turned and walked along the wooden pier, his figure shrinking and merging into the everyday life of the harbor. Isabel stood there alone, feeling more profound solitude than ever. She returned to her small rented room, a falsely safe space with 4 walls and a roof. The first thing she did was lock the door tightly. She took out the dagger and placed it on the table. Under the electric lamp's light, it looked utterly ordinary, just an artifact of stone and silver. But the white light inside it was still flickering, steady and persistent. The scientist's rationality in her surged. She had to understand it. She retrieved her portable geological analysis kit. Carefully, she used a diamond-tipped stylus to scrape a minute speck of dust from the edge of the blade. It was extraordinarily hard. She placed the dust speck onto a glass slide and inserted it into her handheld electron microscope. Holding her breath, she adjusted the focus and peered through the eyepiece. Nothing, just the ordinary crystalline structure of obsidian. No bacteria, no hybrid organic structures. Nothing unusual. Her scientific instruments had once again failed her. They revealed nothing. A wave of frustration and helplessness surged within her. She slumped into a chair, staring at the dagger. If science couldn't analyze it, what was she to do? She recalled Juan's words. Listen to it. It sounded absurd. But she was out of options. Isabel closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing mind. She didn't attempt to analyze or search. She focused solely on the pulsing white light, trying to feel it, to listen to it with a sense she never knew she possessed. Silence. Then, the whisper returned. Slightly clearer. Still the same woman's voice. Isabel. Her name. It knew her name. Release? Release? Release whom? The warriors had already transcended, and then, an image flashed into her mind, vivid as a film reel. It wasn't a haunting memory. It was a present vision. She saw the sonar screen on her main research vessel, where her colleagues were working in another part of the lake. On that screen, an immense energy source she had never seen before emanated from an unexplored abyss. The image vanished as abruptly as it appeared, leaving Isabel gasping in the quiet of her rented room. She stared at the wall, but her mind retained every detail of the sonar display, the coordinates, the frequency, and the deep red energy signature. A type of energy undocumented in any literature. It was too real. Too detailed. Her rational mind screamed that it was another hallucination, a byproduct of exhaustion and trauma. But her instincts told a different story. This wasn't like the distorted, emotion-laden visions the priestess's spirit had thrust upon her. This image was cold, precise, and data-driven. It felt like a report beamed directly into her brain. She had to verify Ida. Scientists' first instinct with new data is to cross-check. She grabbed the satellite phone on the table, her fingers swiftly navigating the screen to find the number for the main research vessel, where her colleagues, Kala and Dren, were continuing their surveys in another part of the lake. She had to ask them. She had to request a scan of those coordinates, but as her finger hovered over the call button, the dagger in her backpack, previously silent, pulsed once. The warm white pulse seeped through the fabric, and the woman's whisper echoed in her mind again, clearer this time, carrying an urgency. "Don't trust them." Isabel froze, the phone nearly slipping from her hand. What? Don't trust Kala and Dren, the people who had faced life and death with her in the cave and on that cursed island. Why? A chill ran down her spine. What was this? A new manipulation? Had the priestess's spirit not dissipated, merely changed tactics? Or was this voice something else entirely? A tangle of skepticism and paranoia enveloped her. She was caught between two supernatural forces she didn't understand. One showed her a potential threat. The other warned her not to trust her only friends. She stared at the phone, then at the backpack where the dagger lay. She couldn't call them directly. If she asked about a non-existent energy source, they'd think she'd lost her mind. But if it was real, and they were hiding something, asking outright would alert them. She needed a different approach. A scientist's approach. Isabel took a deep breath, pushing aside her confusion. She switched to messaging mode, drafting a technical email encrypted per the project's protocol to NC Alara vessel. Recipient, Kala Ren. Subject, request for raw sonar data extraction. Kala, I'm reviewing the final logs before the auxiliary sonar system failed. I detected some inconsistent interference that may affect the calibration of the entire project's data. Please extract and send me the full raw sonar logs from the past 24 hours at coordinates. She typed the exact coordinates from the vision. I need to cross-check the noise filtering algorithms. Inform Dren, I suspect a potential hardware issue. Isabel, it was a perfect lie. Professional, logical, and revealing nothing. She hit send now. She could only wait. The next few hours dragged like centuries. Isabel paced the room, unable to sit still. She didn't dare touch the dagger or dwell on the whisper. She just waited, her heart pounding. Finally, a soft ping sounded from her laptop. An email response. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The email was from Kala. It was brief. Isabel, received your request. Reviewed the logs. Everything here is fine. Sonar is operating within normal parameters. No anomalous data at the coordinates you requested. Worried about you. Kala. Isabel read the message a second time, then a third, each word freezing into her mind. No anomalies. The vision was false. The whisper was right, or Kala was lying. Both possibilities were equally terrifying. Either her mind was betraying her again, or the friends she trusted most were concealing something out there on the cold waters of Lake Titicaca. She stood, pacing the small room, feeling like a caged animal. She analyzed each possibility with the cold logic of a scientist, trying to save herself from madness. First possibility: the vision was false. The dagger, or whatever was whispering to her, had crafted a sophisticated hallucination to sow doubt, to divide her from the only people who knew her secret. Perhaps the woman's voice was part of the deception, another role played by the cunning priestess's spirit's second possibility. The vision was real, and Kala was lying. But why? Kala had endured that nightmare with her. She had seen the unexplainable. Why would she hide an anomalous energy source, a discovery that could redefine their careers? Fear, or some other reason? Isabel paused. She recalled Kala's email, brief, almost curt. No raw data attached as requested. Just a simple denial. It wasn't like Kala's meticulous, detailed work style, no. Something was wrong. She sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by helplessness. She couldn't trust her own mind. She couldn't trust her friends. She was left with only one thing. An unknown variable lying silently in her backpack, the dagger. Then it fell silent, leaving Isabel standing stunned in the dirt road, with a mystery even greater than what she had just endured. Isabel didn't tell Juan about the whisper. She didn't know how to explain it, and deep down, she felt the thank you was something private, a secret meant only for her. She carefully wrapped the dagger in a clean cloth and tucked it deep into her backpack, but she could still feel its gentle, warm pulse, like a second heart beating beside her ribs. The journey back to the harbor passed in silence. The sky was fully bright, and Lake Titicaca had returned to its serene, majestic beauty. Other fishing boats began to appear in the distance, and the laughter of villagers echoed from the shore. The normal world was returning, but for Isabel, it had become frighteningly alien. Everything looked the same as before, but she knew that. Beneath that calm surface lay an abyss of spirits, and in this world, there were ghost islands on no map. When the boat docked, Juan helped her tie it up. They avoided each other's eyes much. A strange awkwardness had formed between them, the awkwardness of two people who had stepped through a door to another world and returned. "Thank you, Juan," Isabel said sincerely. "For everything," Juan just nodded. "Be careful with that thing, miss," he said, his eyes flicking toward Isabel's backpack. "Listen to it, but never let it control you." With that, he turned and walked along the wooden pier, his figure shrinking and merging into the everyday life of the harbor. Isabel stood there alone, feeling more profound solitude than ever. She returned to her small rented room, a falsely safe space with 4 walls and a roof. The first thing she did was lock the door tightly. She took out the dagger and placed it on the table. Under the electric lamp's light, it looked utterly ordinary, just an artifact of stone and silver. But the white light inside it was still flickering, steady and persistent. The scientist's rationality in her surged. She had to understand it. It had changed after she touched it. It had responded to her will on the ghost island. Now it was pulsing in rhythm with her heart. It no longer felt hostile. The whispering voice from it, though mysterious, carried a sadness, a warning. She had to try again. Isabel took out the carefully wrapped dagger. Its faint white light seemed subdued in the dimly lit room. She held it in her hand, feeling the familiar pulse. This time, she didn't just listen. She actively posed a question, not with words, but with intense focus of her will. "What is out there? Show me the truth." She directed her thoughts into the dagger, using it as an antenna, a tool to reach places her senses could not. The white light in the dagger suddenly flared up and the world around her dissolved. She was no longer in her lodging room. She was in a familiar place, the bridge of the research vessel Alara. She was an invisible observer. She saw Calla sitting at the main console, her hands typing something. She saw Dren standing with arms crossed in the corner, his face tense and full of worry. And on the main sonar screen, clear as day, was a deep red energy signature, exactly like what she had seen in her first vision. They saw it. They knew it was there. Then a fourth person entered the bridge from behind. A man, in a gray uniform without insignia, his face cold and emotionless. Isabel had never met him. He approached, placing a hand on Calla's shoulder in a falsely familiar way. "Just respond to her as we agreed," the man said, his voice flat and unemotional. Calla flinched but nodded reluctantly. She typed a few final lines and hit send beside the screen. Isabel saw a steaming cup of coffee. She saw a half-finished geological map that Calla was working on. She saw the fresh scar on Dren's hand as he clenched his fist. It was too real. This wasn't a hallucination. This was the present. The vision shattered. Isabel was thrown back into her body, gasping for breath, collapsing onto the bed. The truth was worse than she had imagined. They weren't lying to her because they didn't believe her. They were lying because they were forced to. The chill Isabel felt now didn't come from supernatural fear, but from human betrayal. There was another force on the lake, one with people, with power. And they had her friend's panic surged in her chest. A feeling worse than facing ghosts. Ghosts, though terrifying, operated by some supernatural rules. But humans did not. Human malice had no limits, no logic. Who were they? The government? Some private corporation that had discovered the energy source from her research? Or a modern cult, heirs to the Dark Priest, seeking to unleash his power? A whirlwind of questions spun in her mind, but there were no answers. The only thing she knew for sure was that Calla and Dren were in danger. They weren't allies to those people. She had seen the fear and reluctance on Calla's face, the helpless anger in Dren's clenched fist. They were hostages forced to cooperate. She had to get to them, but how? Rush out there on a boat and demand they release her friends? Those people would simply eliminate all three and cover their tracks. She couldn't call the local authorities. What would she say? That she had a supernatural vision from a magical dagger? They'd lock her up in a mental hospital. She was completely alone now. Not completely. Her gaze turned to the backpack. Inside it, the dagger was still emitting a warm white pulse. It was no longer a curse. It was a tool, a compass, a channel of communication. And the woman's whisper, "Don't trust them." It had warned her. It had helped her. She didn't know who it was or what it wanted, but right now, it was her only lie. Isabel stood up, determination hardening her face. She couldn't sit here and wait. She needed a plan. She needed a boat. And most importantly, she needed someone who could navigate Lake Titicaca without GPS or sonar. She needed Juan. Isabel carefully stowed the dagger in her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and stepped out of the lodging room. The world outside no longer seemed peaceful. Now every face she passed on the dirt road of the fishing village carried suspicion. A fisherman mending his net looked up at her, his gaze lingering a bit too long. A group of children playing suddenly fell silent as she walked by. Was she being paranoid? Or did those people have agents everywhere, watching her? She found Juan at the water's edge, preparing his boat for an afternoon trip. He looked up as she approached, and he didn't seem surprised to see her. "I need your help," Isabel said directly, without beating around the bush. "I've already helped you, miss," Juan replied, his voice still calm. "The haunting is over." "No," Isabel said, her voice urgent. It's not over. It's just changed. There are others out there on the lake. They're not spirits. They're living people, and they're dangerous. They're holding my friends." Juan looked at her, his eyes full of skepticism. "How do you know?" Isabel hesitated. She couldn't talk about her vision. She had to speak in a language he could understand. She slowly removed her backpack, taking out the dagger wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it. The gentle white light, synchronized with her heartbeat, glowed in the daylight. Juan stared at the dagger, then into Isabel's eyes. He saw the truth there. He saw the desperation and resolve. "It showed me," Isabel said simply. "It showed me my friends are in danger. Those people, they want the power that imprisoned the souls. They want the power of the lake." That statement worked. The skepticism on Juan's face vanished, replaced by a cold determination. Protecting the lake was his sacred duty. He looked toward Isabel's modern research vessel, now a glittering prison in the distance. Then he looked back at his own small, weathered wooden boat. "They have technology. We can't get close without being detected," he said. "That's why I need you," Isabel replied. "You know the secret paths, the fog currents. And I have this." She held up the dagger. "It's our compass." Juan stood silent for a long while, gazing at the lake. Finally, he nodded. "They cannot have the lake's power," he repeated. "That cannot happen." He turned to Isabel. "Prepare yourself. We'll set out at dusk when the fog is thickest." Dusk fell. Over Lake Titicaca, unlike anywhere else on Earth, the sky didn't transition from blue to orange to red. Instead, it was like a massive purple ink stain slowly spreading, devouring the daylight. The air grew colder, and fog began rolling in from the lake's surface, white and dense as milk. Isabel met Juan at the dock. He had prepared his small wooden boat. It had no noisy engine, just a pair of oars and a small sail that could be raised if there was wind. A ghost boat, perfect for a ghostly mission. Juan handed her a cloak woven from alpaca wool, thick and heavy. "It will keep you warm and hide you from prying eyes," he said simply. They said nothing more as they pushed the boat away from the shore. The wooden vessel glided silently, quickly swallowed by the fog bank. The dock and the village lights vanished behind them as if they had never existed. Now their world was only the black water, the white mist, and two people on a fragile boat. "How? Do we know where to go?" Isabel asked, her voice a mere whisper. The fog was so thick she couldn't see the bow of the boat. Juan didn't answer. He just nodded toward her backpack. Isabel understood. She carefully took out the dagger. Its white light seemed even brighter in the fog, creating a hazy glow around them. She held it with both hands, focusing. At first, she felt nothing beyond the familiar pulse. But as she thought of the research ship, of Kala and Dren, she felt a gentle pull, an urge toward one direction. Left, she said. Juan quietly adjusted the oars, steering the boat in the direction she indicated.
In the shadow of my archive, a new horror stirs. Date to listen.